So welcome to another edition of Safe Campuses Dialogues. I am Srimoy and I lead the legal and content team here at Locubator, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. For those who are joining us for the first time, Locubator is a workplace compliance platform that also works closely with colleges and universities to help them build safe campuses. At the heart of our platform is a secure complaint redressal system that allows institutions to handle sensitive issues like sexual harassment, ragging with confidentiality and transparency. And we also offer a wide range of e-learning courses and campus-specific courses on topics like PoSH, anti-ragging, IP for students other than law, and more. Now, as you all know, today's topic is best practices for effective ICs in colleges and universities. And we are joined by two incredible women leading the way in PoSH implementation on campuses. So we have with us today Dr. Sharmistha Majumdar. She's an associate professor in biological sciences and engineering at IIT Gandhinagar, with a PhD from Cornell University and extensive postdoctoral experience at UC Berkeley. In addition to her academic work, Dr. Majumdar serves as chair of the internal committee under the PoSH Act at IIT Gandhinagar, guiding the campus in implementing sexual harassment prevention and redressal mechanisms. A mentor and educator at heart, she bridges scientific rigor with institutional culture building to foster a safer and more inclusive campus. Thank you, Sharmistha ma'am, for joining us. We are very happy to have you with us today. We also have with us Ruchira Banerjee. Ruchira is a lawyer and a seasoned PoSH trainer and advisor with nearly a decade of experience in gender justice and workplace rights. Her journey began in 2015 with an international anti-trafficking organization in Mumbai, where she worked on rescue, rehabilitation, and legal advocacy, handling cases related to POXO and trafficking to protect the rights of women and children. Since 2017, she has collaborated with several organizations across sectors to foster safe, inclusive, and sexual harassment-free workplaces through awareness trainings, leadership sensitization, capacity building for internal committees, and by serving as an external member and advisor on PoSH. Thanks, Ruchira, for joining us today. We are very excited to have you both. Now, let's jump right into our first round. So, Dr. Sharmistha ma'am, the first question for you would be, at a large and diverse campus like IIT Gandhinagar, what initiatives have you implemented to make the IC more approachable and PoSH awareness part of everyday campus life?
Sure. So what we try to do, because we have, like you correctly mentioned, we have a very diverse campus. So we have students right from teenagers who are not even adults at the undergraduate level to postgraduates, as well as postdoctoral kind of people who are in their 30s. And then there are, of course, the faculty and staff. And we all most of us live on campus. So it's a residential campus. So that has its challenges and strengths, I guess, to deal with a community like that. So although, of course, the IC, of course, deals with all kinds of harassment. It's not just students. However, the students do form the biggest body in terms of a community. So we work very strongly very closely with the student leaders. And luckily for us, I guess, in this time and age, like the student council, although is predominantly male, that happens. It's an IIT. Well, that's for a different discussion. They are very sensitive about these issues. So they approached me. I took over this position a year ago. And even before I had gotten a grasp of the whole, whatever I was supposed to do, they approached me and said, here are the problems in the hostel. Here are the problems during festivals. And and they came together, and so it was very nice working with them. I really cherished that. So we did a lot of these, in the hostel area we would have these open houses, which would have, sometimes they would open mics where people would just come and talk about different issues related to broadly harassment, gender sensitization. And some of us would be there, but we kind of take a back seat. So we'd be there to tell them that we exist, because that is also something which many kids don't know when they come, especially the new people. And but the student leaders kind of take the front seat, and they kind of do it in their own way. So we let them kind of design it in a way that kind of talks to the current generation, the young generation. So that is one thing we have been actively doing. We try to have these at least once or twice a semester, very informal. Well, informal in the sense that they're always in the hostel area. So that even if they are not planning to come, it's on their way to the mess. It's in an open space. So we've been doing that. And we also, of course, have posters everywhere. So this was something which, again, the student community, the leaders only suggested that many people, even if we have multiple sessions, it just doesn't register to them that we exist. So having those posters everywhere, and in fact, again, we took their help to make them catchy. So we've designed some posters which are in the hostel area, in the mess, apart from the academic area where classrooms and so on. And then again, I can talk about this later also in terms of how complaints are made. We've tried to make that. So there are some misconceptions which I think Ruchira would be able to address even better, because sometimes we don't even know what can or cannot be done. However, the confidentiality is something which is a big concern with many people. And there have been many instances when they just walk into my office and just chat. So it's not really a complaint. However, they just want to talk to somebody. And I think that is a space we've been trying to create. Yeah. So I guess I'll stop here. I think I can respond to other questions and hear the rest of you speak too.
That's great. I mean, yeah, like you rightly pointed out, even the new joinees would be more comfortable speaking to a student leader rather than going to the IC directly. Awesome. So Ruchira, the next question for you would be, when you work with institutions setting up or restructuring their ICs, what best practices or proactive steps do you recommend to help them get it right from the start?
Yeah, I think to get it right from the start, I think it's always a good idea to go back to the basics. Do the basics correctly. So first things first, you constitute the internal committee correctly. Now, by the word correctly, I would mean that have a presiding officer. Follow the PoSH law that is there, and if UGC regulation is applicable to your institute, then follow that. Or any other regulation on prevention of sexual harassment that is specifically applicable to your educational institution, I think it's important to follow that. Now, having said that, one presiding officer, to teaching staff, to non-teaching staff, student representation, like ma'am said, because students play a massive role when it comes to even prevention and even creating awareness, right? To have an external member, all of these things are where you need to first constitute the internal committee. Of course, you define their terms, you tell them that you need to maintain confidentiality, you train them, all of those things are there. But my interaction with educational institutions and even with organizations also, I tell them that please speak to the people you are thinking of nominating as committee members, because they should be really up for the cause. They should be committed to the cause, right? We have to understand that we have 10,000 things to do in a day. And when a complaint comes, when an issue comes, we have to keep aside all of those things and focus on the redressal. So you should be really committed to the cause. And there is, I think, now that, 10 years into this, I think that's how I also interpret the law, where the law specifically says that choose people who are committed to the cause, choose people who have social background, choose people who have experience. Where I come in as an external member, I have legal background, I have experience in handling of sexual harassment complaints, and also I'm a person familiar with how the whole law should be implemented, right? So I think that's one reason. So I always tell my, whether it's organization or institutes, that please speak to these people whether they're really up for it or not, right? And I think the second thing that I always tell them, that please make sure that you have proper representation. Like ma'am said, that residential units are there. So you have hostels, you have wardens, you have different kinds of employees walking in, right? So at least do the bare minimum that the law requires you to do when you constitute the internal committee, but also have representation. The whole idea is that the internal committee should be approachable. I mean, if I am a person who is stationed at the hostel for whatever job role, I shouldn't feel intimidated that, oh, I have to go to that teacher, that professor to file a complaint. Let it be. I won't even go. So at least somebody from my unit should be there. So I think those are the things that I at least tell organization and institutes, that have proper representation. Make the IC approachable, make it more visible. So these are the tips that I usually tell them to follow.
Yeah. Just a quick follow-up question, Ruchira. Sometimes we see, under one university, there are multiple campuses. So
Yes.
do you suggest that we have separate ICs for each campus?
Yes. If possible, please do it, because the law specifically says that no matter how many units or branches you have, you need to have their own internal committee if that strength is more than 10 employees. That's the word that they have used in the law, right? So, see, if I'm sitting in campus A and an incident happens in campus A, campus B is there, campus C is there. If something happens in B, I will file a complaint at B itself, at the B's internal committee, rather than going to the A's internal committee. Right? So it's all about approachability. It's about making the IC more visible. So yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ruchira. Very helpful insights, especially for the institutions that might still be the setup stage. Moving on to the next round. So, ma'am, the next question for you would be, as we all know, college fests and competitions bring big crowds and informal settings. So, what preventive measures or protocols does your IC follow during such events to reduce risk?
So yes, festivals, of course, it's kind of a crowd we are not even familiar with. And in fact, the campus is a little way more open than on normal days, because a lot of kids from the local colleges do come in. However, at that point, again, at least we do work closely with the student leaders, because most of these festivals are there'll be a subset of the student leaders who are in the organization of these festivals. And so, you don't want to go so the adults and the IC, people like us, we don't want to go and sit there. That's kind of like you're like being the mob campus, the police sitting there. So we have this, so the general secretary, and then we have something called a student senate. They are and then we have student guides. So it's a pretty big team. So they are definitely on top of things. And many times, even if there isn't a complaint from a person, they inform us informally, like that something is happening, and we are but then they will then go and talk to. So this is another thing that has helped us a lot, where these student leaders go and talk to the person who is being harassed. Maybe they've confided to them, and then they tell them that, yeah, no, they're not that intimidating. Yeah, these people are faculty, they teach you in class. However, you will be listened to, and they will put this right on top of their priority for that immediately. That is the point of the committee. And somehow they have been helping us in that way, because there is no way in which I can convince a student that they can come to us. Yeah. It is harder again in the other, because we have all kinds of people. So the staff and the students, if they are the ones who want to complain, that it becomes a little harder, because sometimes these are your peers in the faculty group. There is unfortunately more, I think the staff and faculty hierarchy might be more than the students faculty hierarchy in some places, given our country and our overall just the culture of India. And so sometimes that also is hard to navigate. But then I think even if you yourself are not there, we've had these awareness sessions, but frankly, these very formal sessions, somehow it doesn't register in people's heads. They forget. They just think it's a compulsory training session, and I just will sign my name and that's it. It's more this organic stuff that helps. And so we try to find allies in different domains and have them tell the stakeholders that they can come to us. So far, I think we've been able to reach out. At least, we feel optimistic that people have been coming. But yeah, fests, like I kind of digress. But yeah, so fests again, the same. The student leaders are the ones we directly reach out to, and they have been doing a very good. At least the last year's leaders were. They did bring some cases. Actually, there were some very serious cases which were dealt with. These were by people from outside the community. But they were brought to us thanks to the student leaders who kind of were aware of what was going on. Because when there's a rock concert going on, it's very hard for anyone to even notice what's happening. So we as a 5-member committee can't just be there. We aren't there. So we depend on the student leaders to let us know about things like that. But I think what we have been insisting, and luckily they are completely on board with us, is that yeah, safety is prime. Like there is no compromise in. So it's not like it can be dealt with sometimes. This is always true. So whether it's a fest or it's a classroom, the rules are the same. So we take it equally seriously.
Understood. That's really amazing, ma'am. And I'm really curious to know that how do you select the student leaders? As in, do they belong to a particular batch, or how does it work?
So there are elections where very hard, like they take it very seriously. Yeah, so they have. So we do not vote. The students vote for their own leaders. And there are several positions. So like welfare secretary, general secretary, and then mess secretary. And then there's something called the student senate. Given that this is an IIT and we have way less women students in many, especially in the undergraduate population, they do have a girl senator where so that there is some female representation. Yes. And also when we talk about this, we don't just. So another thing which we have been doing, which is beyond the PoSH Act, or I guess it comes under the purview, is in none of our posters we say we mention this is all students. So because there have been cases where, so we do have some openly trans people on campus. We have a pretty strong LGBTQ group, and they have so there are harassments happening there too, which could not be reported because they think this is a women only thing. So we've been a little consciously trying to portray this as an organization where anybody can come to us. So it's not just the complainant does not have to be a woman, an identified woman. And in fact, in some of these open houses, we even addressed specifically the trans queer community as well. So, and some of them even spoke up and talked about issues they've had. So that was also very heartening.
Wonderful examples, ma'am. Thank you so much. Moving on, Ruchira, the next question for you would be, with so much student life happening online, what best practices do you recommend for ICs to handle digital sexual harassment?
Interesting, because I think our 60% of our life is driven by the whole digital world, right? So we are always digitally available. Even we are doing this session here using a platform. See, I mean, if you look at the law, which specifically talks about prevention, prohibition, and redressal, so these are threefold, right? So as a part of prevention and prohibition, we prohibit sexual harassment. That is one, right? The law prohibits any incident of sexual harassment. Second is preventive. So when we talk about digital harassment, digital form of sexual harassment, I think it's very important to call it out loud. You need to talk about it. You need to put a provision even in your PoSH policy to start with, that this is digital harassment. These are the examples. I mean, very commonly, at least for the last few months that I have been seeing, one of the very common forms of digital harassment is taking a screenshot. I put up a WhatsApp status, I'm holidaying somewhere or something of that sort. And probably I'm wearing something very casual, and somebody takes that screenshot and feels very proud of, spreading it like wildfire. Yeah. And then rumors start from that. Ruchira has been there. Ruchira was wearing that. Have you looked at her? How she looks, what she's wearing, all those things. Right. And then the character assassination starts eventually. Yeah. So call out digital harassment, define it in your policy. That is the first step. Yeah. Have conversation around it, like cyber stalking, sending obscene messages, sending images, sending GIFs. I don't know what all other forms of images that have come now, but whether it's WhatsApp, whether it's any communication platform that you're using, that is one thing, right? Second, I would feel I don't know, something that I call as a digital conduct policy or guidelines, like how I conduct myself digitally. I am responsible as to how I'm conducting myself digitally, whether I am a faculty member or a non-teaching staff or a student. It doesn't matter. What is my conduct digitally? I think that is something that needs to be defined properly. I know probably it is not something that is, I'm sure it's there, but I don't know how to define. But just bring in all the brains together and discuss at the institution level that, okay, see, these are the things we need to address. Since the internal committee members also have to, probably in unfortunate incidents where they have to handle complaints that have happened on a digital platform, the internal committee members also have to be equipped. Equipped in the sense, say, for example, if we are taking a CCTV footage evidence as form of evidence, how do we take that evidence? Because we can't attach a CCTV video to our report, right? But we take screenshots of that image. Yeah. So how we are well equipped to use the whole digital world when we are taking evidence or how we are talking. One simple example. I always tell this to all my committee members that I am part of, that we are using a platform, meeting platform, right? When we are setting up inquiries, please do not use the word PoSH meetings or this versus this. These are the things that we have to be very mindful. I mean, this way, one, you talk about it, you take a step to prevent it, you define it, you discuss about it, and then you also equip the internal committee members when they are handling an incident that has happened in the digital platform, sexual harassment incident and the digital platform. I think, yeah, I just wanted to break it down with, the prevention, prohibition, and the redressal part. So yeah, pretty much that's about it, about the digital harassment.
Very practical tips, Ruchira. I mean, what you said about the digital conduct policy is, I mean, it's so simple but so obvious. I mean, definitely it's the need of the hour. Digital
Yes.
conduct policy. Yes, absolutely. And the fact that you pointed out how digital evidence should be taken into account, and also we honestly never talk about these things, and most of us, we don't really know unless we have to do it. So thanks for bringing that up. Really relevant.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to the next round. So, ma'am, the question for you is, false or malicious complaints are a concern for many IC members. So, what approach or process do you follow to handle such cases carefully and fairly without discouraging genuine complaints?
Yeah, that's a hard question, I guess. So, at least what we have been doing is that we just keep talking to the different people that have been named from either side, and it's important to be be very neutral when we do this. So it's just like I guess the key is just to spend a lot of time. So we've sometimes I've had, because as chair they come to me, so then I've had spend a lot of time talking to this person. Sometimes it even turns into this counseling session, and then I would reach out to the campus counselors also to talk to them because they are the experts. However, we need to be, like, I think what is very important is to keep a neutral mind, and when we talk to the person who has been complained about, so the complainant and so the respondent, we need to have an open mind to see what he or she has to say. It is difficult sometimes because the complaint is sometimes really very serious. But then usually when we meet the respondent, we do meet as a committee sometimes. If the complaint is very serious, we just feel that it's, and one of us tries to, like, so because the respondent is often the person who says this is all false or it's malicious or there is some targeting. And what we've been trying to do is kind of make that person, because we usually inform them about the complaint. So that's part of the deal. So not the details, but there has been a complaint and we would like you to respond and come, and within the next 2 days is what we give, 2 to 3 days. But then we try to start the meeting with something out of topic. So how is it going? What do you teach? Or what are your hobbies? Something. So usually the external member does that because he or she knows us. It's me. Because, so then that becomes very awkward. Sometimes it's a colleague, sometimes it's a student who we've taught. So the internal members of the committee, like the from the institute, do not we take a back seat. We're all sitting at the same table, and the external member initiates that conversation, which is more casual, just to put the person at ease. And then we do spend a lot of time. It's even speaking to the other person to see what he or she has to say. Yeah. And it's not easy. Yeah, I will admit it is not easy. If it goes into that zone of that person not accepting or saying that this is all false, it isn't very easy. But then even from the other side, we do informally speak to other people, because the person who complains also is asked if there are other people who can corroborate what the complaint is about. And more often than not, they actually come with other friends. And so it's difficult, because they could also be saying the same thing. Yeah. So this is a hard. It's more like something we deal case by case, and yeah, it does lead to sleepless nights as well, because yeah, especially for us who are not trained in this, some of it is very disturbing, and so yeah, it's a moral battle.
And you're always scared. What if you take the wrong decision?
Yes. So of course, the perfect case is the complainant complains and the respondent accepts and it's closed. But that never happens. Yeah. Right. And so then sometimes the respondent will say no, but will be passive, will not be very aggressive. But then we have some who get aggressive also, saying exactly what you're saying, that I'm being framed and so on. So then it is hard. And we oftentimes, we also have to then involve, if it's a student, we would involve counselors, because if it gets too aggressive, we don't want something else to happen. So we have to be in touch with, again, given the confidentiality of it all, it is something which we can't do impulsively. So we ourselves have to maintain our calm. So that is very hard.
Absolutely. Ruchira, do you have any tips to share on the same topic?
With respect to proving false complaints or handling false complaints?
Yeah.
See, keeping aside false complaint, most of the complaints that I've handled have never come with good evidence. Never. Even I'm a lawyer and I have struggled a lot to collect evidence, because see, the law says 3 possibilities, right? When you're handling a complaint, it says that you can have 3 possibilities. One, that the allegations were proved and the internal committee recommends actions. Okay. Second is the allegations could not be proved and the internal committee cannot recommend actions. Okay. Third is that the complaint was proved to be false and hence recommendations are given to take action against the person who filed a false complaint. Even filing a false information or giving malicious documents, false documents, is also, discipline. It can attract discipline. But like ma'am said, to come to that conclusion that even this is a false complaint, for the internal committee needs to have substantial evidence to show that, yes, why it is a false complaint. Because the law, on one hand, it's saying that, see, if a complainant is not able to get evidence, it does not mean it's a false complaint. That is one thing, right? So it's literally difficult to prove. But yes, I think the internal committee puts in a lot of effort before they come to a conclusion, no matter whether the allegations have been proved, not proved, or whether it's a false complaint. So we ask people, we talk to people. Sometimes we do see a lot of biasness. Biasness is just on the face. Where the respondent says, yeah, I'm calling 5 people, they will speak on behalf of me. The complainant says, yeah, I have 10 more people who will speak on behalf of me. It's like, my word against yours. Those situations there, but the thing is that the internal committee, I don't think ever, or at least the ones that I have been part of, they don't leave any stone unturned. I think we turn every stone and we try to look for a conclusion. That's probably one answer that I can give you in this respect.
Right. It's just, it just proves that being a part of an IC is no joke. It is a very serious responsibility.
That's the reason I told you in my first question. You need to ask the committee members whether you really want to do it or not.
If they're up for it.
It is taxing. It is exhausting and it's overwhelming.
It's overwhelming.
So, Yeah.
So like I just don't sleep at night. Like I feel like, oh, I'm strong, I can handle it, and then I just realize I'm not sleeping because it's just in my head.
Yeah.
And so even like evidence, what like a lot of people refuse to even put it in writing. Like they will spend 2 hours telling you what's going on, but are very scared to put it on paper. So we still investigate, but we cannot do a formal case if there is if they don't want to even sign it or so. But then we don't dismiss a person. That is what we have been trying to do. That we keep the safe space for them, so that even if somebody else hears about a similar thing going on, they don't feel like, oh, nothing happens there, so I'm not going to go. Yeah. So it is. So many of the cases we've handled, they refuse to even put it in writing. Yeah, so they just want to talk. They want to verbally complain. They'll say, after I graduate, then you can do something. And then we have, the law has its, that it has to be a new, fresh complaint.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's not easy. Yeah.
Challenge. Okay, moving on to the next question for you, Ruchira. PoSH awareness often stops at students and teaching staff. So, what steps do you recommend to be taken to train and sensitize office staff, security teams, and other support staff on campus?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is safe to say that this segment of employees, whether it is, who are responsible for upkeep or maybe gardeners, security, I think they are not the ignored segment, but definitely an overlooked segment of employees where they can be easily overlooked, right? Because I'll give you one example. With one, I was working with one of the leading management institutes of India, where they very happily said, "Ma'am, we conduct nukkad nataks, those street theaters, and everybody is aware. It's a very fun way of doing trainings, and people, like the visual representation and all those things." And it actually got me thinking that those people were only including the students and the teaching and the non-teaching staff. This particular segment that we're talking about, the security guard, he or she was stationed wherever that person was supposed to be. The hostel warden was there in the hostel because he or she, they were carrying out their work, right? So, which is why I said that it's very easy to overlook this particular segment of employees. But what I would suggest is that please invest time, energy, financially also on training these people, because anybody who is part of the ecosystem of that institution should be trained. That is it. That's the rule, right? And do it in such a way. Say, for example, if I'm a person employed, say, as for the upkeeping, right, housekeeping stuff, my job starts, say, from 6 a.m. and it gets over by 11, just saying. And you conduct a training from 3 p.m. It's not part of my duty times, right? So put in effort where you do a training, say a morning shift or the evening shift. Make the training accessible to these people. That is one. Second is language, because if somebody understands, right now I'm based out of Bangalore, and there are a lot of institutes who say that you need to do training in Kannada. Obviously, because if I go and speak in English and that person is not able to really grasp what I'm saying in English, it makes no sense. It's just waste of time, my time and their time as well. So the whole purpose is lost. So I think it's very important to keep in mind the vernacular there, the language that you're using to these trainings. Another very important thing is that I think at the beginning of the session, ma'am mentioned where we forget the details after the training, or it's something that thought we don't carry it with us, right? We don't think about it as something, we kind of misplace it somewhere in our heads. In this particular sector, and I think for across all forms of employees, I think the visual representation, give examples which is relatable to them. I mean, if I am training a group of security guards on how to be, aware and what to do, what not to do, and I'm giving them example that has something happened in a corporate setup, it makes no sense to them. At least, even if I don't have real life experience of handling something that is specific to the institute or specific to the security guards, at least I can come up with scenarios to make it more relatable, make it more understandable. I think these three things, do trainings, Fix up time, give them the option. You are making it mandatory, but give them the option. Okay, morning you couldn't attend, at least attend in the evening. Or today you couldn't attend tomorrow. That's how you should plan your session. Second, keep in mind the language that you want to impart the training in, right? And third would be where you use role plays, case scenarios, case studies, visual representation. I think that's important way where we can really have an effective training for this particular segment.
Right. And it's their workplace. So they could also be, harassed while they
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. They should be aware of their rights and duty. Simple. What is my right? That okay, if I get sexually harassed, I have a right to go and file a complaint. And my duty is also to not cause any unwelcome or sexual conduct which is going to make my colleague, no matter who it is, right, in that ecosystem of that institution, that I should be responsible for my conduct. Simple as that. So they have the right, they have to be included in training. So it's
Absolutely.
important to include them. But yeah, their way, more like a tailored fit, customized trainings like that.
Absolutely. All right. Moving on to the next round for you, ma'am. If a student or staff witnesses inappropriate behavior as a bystander, can they bring it to the IC? And what processes or support do you have in place to encourage them to do so?
Yeah, so I guess this again connects to what I was saying before. So we have been doing these awareness sessions. Of course, many of them, unfortunately, as of now, are targeted towards the student community because that is more like we keep getting new students, unlike the staff and faculty who are more stagnant. So what we do encourage is that like if so many of them have come to me saying that my friend is too scared to come but I would like to say this. But of course, we have not registered a complaint. I guess you cannot register a complaint, but we have investigated informally via, say they complain about a staff member. So we will try to informally find out so this has to be done very discreetly because again, because people would get upset if we are snooping around. We ask people who we trust and then we try to go about it. But what we do tell the person who brings the complaint that please tell your friend that they can come and talk to us and please empower them about it. The fact that this is confidential, so that is something which we keep repeating. Please insist that this is going to be confidential. We will not speak about this beyond the room and they can be assured of that. That is something which we have been trying. We have had a few cases like that where a friend has first come and then that has been followed by the actual person coming. However, even at that point, what I was mentioning before has happened, that they are still scared to put it in writing. However, they've at least come and spoken directly. And if it's a verbal complaint from the complainant, at least based on that, you can do an investigation. Although, sometimes what happens is they speak and then I say, okay, you don't have to write it, but what if I write it? Like, so me as in whoever she's complaining to, and would you then be willing to kind of, attest it? So they have done that sometimes and they'll just say, and yeah, this is something which is fine and you can send this. They also sometimes are very scared about their identity. So if the incident that they're reporting is very, very specific, then the person they're complaining about will immediately figure out who it is. So it's again, those are case specific. But yes, going back to your original question that, yeah, we've had times where people have come and we have encouraged that person to tell their friend to assure them that the confidentiality is going to be maintained no matter what. So they don't have to be worried about the fact that. And sometimes we have to play around with. So say in the committee there is, I haven't taught this person if it's a student, but the other member has. So then they'll be like, oh, I don't want her to be there. The person who's taught me, she might judge me, but I have never taught them. So because I'm in a different department. So they might feel more open about it. So there have been all kinds. Again, the opposite also happens, that she's taught me, she knows me, she'll trust me. And so we've had to make those adjustments. And we've had some positive stories where at least they've come and spoken. Maybe we haven't been able to take action because there wasn't evidence. It's a sense they're getting. and then they've graduated and they've just said that no, we just want to move on. However, there have been some incidents where the friend has managed to coax the other person to come and talk to us. Yeah. But I'm sure there are more. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that there are some who are not even coming. So that is a challenge that we are trying to always grappling with. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
So next question for you, Ruchira. What orientation or capacity building do you recommend when new IC members join so that they're prepared to handle sensitive complaints from day one, especially when they are, say, not from a legal background or not really familiar, but they want to be a part of the IC?
Yeah, interesting, because see, the law specifically says that you need to train your internal committee members. And there is a reason behind it. That because you will be dealing with so much of sensitivity, so much of information, you need to maintain confidentiality. So, whenever, at least whether I'm conducting trainings or whether the trainings that I have attended, I have always seen that for internal committee members, the training structure is completely different from the ones that you usually use for your employees or students, right? Because internal committee trainings, I think first the focus should be in understanding the legal framework. That is the very basic. And I think the internal committee members also should be very sensitive enough to understand that what is welcome to me could be unwelcome to that person. So when a complaint comes, there, see, we are all biased. Okay. Little bit here and there, we are all biased, and that biasness can come up in any stage of the redressal. What we have to do is we have to keep that biasness aside. That is the main goal, that we have to be unbiased and look into the complaint, right? So for the internal committee members, I think the training should start with proper legal framework, understanding of that framework, understanding of the service rules that are applicable to that particular institute, whether any regulation, any order that has come up, any notices, whether from the Ministry of Women and Child Development or from the Education Ministry, or even, the district officer is giving any regulations or anything of that sort, then these notices you must be aware of it. That is one. Second is, for the internal committee members, it is very important to understand how to handle a complaint, redressal of the complaint. What is the process? Because your reporting, your documentation needs to be watertight. It has to stand the test of judicial test, right? So it has to be like that. Whatever you document, the conversation you're having. Very important thing, the internal committee must be aware of what questions to ask and what questions not to ask. Yeah, I think what not to ask is more important. The rest will fall into its place. Yeah, so that's one thing. And apart from that, yeah, documentation, reporting, and all of those things are definitely there. And there are specific responsibilities that the internal committee members only have to ensure. One, confidentiality. Second is the sensitivity around it. Third, following principles of natural justice. I think that's very important. Yeah. Unfortunately, one of the ICs I was part of as an external member, I remember we had received one complaint, and one internal committee member said, "Oh, that lady has filed a complaint. Of course, have you seen the kind of dresses she wears? Of course, people will harass her." I was shocked that this person is part of the committee. And I kid you not, I actually had to fight with the management to get rid of that person from the committee. Right? Because I said, I am not going anywhere because something is definitely wrong here. And, as a committee member, you cannot say these things. You should not be saying these things. So, whether a new committee member is there or an existing committee member, training and the dialogue around this should be ongoing, right? That is one thing. So it should be a continuous upgrading our knowledge. That's one thing. How the law is evolving, all of those. Apart from that, and this is one tip that I always give, not really tip, it's a request, more so request that I give to all my internal committee members, that you will never get a perfect complaint. You cannot expect a perfect complaint. There is a lot of human emotions involved. It takes a lot of courage for a person to come forward and say that I'm being sexually harassed, for a lot of reasons. How we are conditioned, how women is treated in the society in general. The moment we open newspapers, we see some 10 offenses have been committed against women, right? So we always have that fear. At workplace, we have the fear of retaliation, right? So these things always work. So I always respect the fact that if a person is filing a complaint, they are trusting the internal committee a lot, right? So we should do it whatever it takes to kind of come to a conclusion. So yeah, coming back, I always tell the internal committee members that take this training in such a way that when a person walks up to you and says that, I have been sexually harassed or I want to speak to you, what will be your response? Know that first. That first response actually sets the entire context and the trust building, right? First, you do not say, oh, okay, I will look into it. Acha, that person has done this. Acha, that dekh lenge attitude, we'll see him. Don't worry. No. The first conversation sets the context, it builds that trust. So I think for any committee member, it's very important that you should be aware that if a person walks up to you and says that I have been sexually harassed, what will be your response? Keeping aside your meetings, keeping aside whatever commitment that you have for that day, have a conversation. So these things needs to be kept in mind. And I think the trainer or the external member, if that person is also an advisor and the trainer, it's very important for that person to do a lot of scenario-based conversation. That also gives the other internal committee members who may not have experience in handling complaints at least some view, as to how to how to handle a complaint, what questions to be asked, how to do a documentation. I think the committee comes together. That's why it's a committee, right? Otherwise, one person would have been appointed; they could have just taken the decision on their own. So I think that way, I think it should be, how the capacity building must be done for committee members.
Very insightful. We have a couple of questions. We'll go back to the questions just after two more questions. But before that, Ruchira, just a quick thing. We may have a few new IC members who have joined. Could you very briefly explain principles of natural justice, just because you brought it up? Just in one line, maybe.
Principles of natural justice. So I'll give you two contexts here. One is you have to allow both the parties to the complaint to speak, tell their side of the story. You cannot listen to one party, whether it is the complainant or the respondent, and take your decision. No. You have to give both the parties here equal chance to speak up. That is one. Second is where if you are a witness or there is a tendency where you are could be little biased towards either parties to the complaint, you step down from being the internal committee member. You rule out any form of biasness that might seep in, right? So principles of natural justice is based on these principles, that you do the right thing that needs to be done. Give people the chance to speak so that and only on based of whatever these two people are saying, then you come to a decision. So pretty much that.
Yes. Thanks, Ruchira. Okay, last two questions and then we'll open the floor for audience questions. So, ma'am, the final question would be, with students graduating and staff changes, how do you ensure that institutional memory, documentation, and learning from past cases aren't lost?
Oh, is this for me? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So we do maintain written records actually. So we do have an email address, which we also, which is also on our posters for students to complain to. So the complaint itself remains in that email box. So it's not in my name. It's ICC at the rate. And so that, of course, retains a digital record of all the cases. But then after we have a very detailed record keeping. We do have a secretary in the committee who takes minutes. And then we write very detailed meeting notes. Of course, these are all confidential. And it all goes into the file. And so these are hard copies which are maintained along with the soft copies in the email inbox. And as and when the committee changes, this gets handed over to the new committee. And there's usually some overlap between the two committees. So the secretary or even the chair is in touch with each other for some months, so that in case there are clarifications, those can be taken care of. But we have been doing very detailed record keeping. That is one place where we've been like the training part is something which we still have to work on. We haven't. Yeah, that's what I independently discussed with you about things we could do. Record keeping, we have been very diligently keeping records of all correspondence, emails, even the minutes of the verbal discussions we've had with both sides. So that, and those get handed over in a hard copy folder.
Right. Thanks, ma'am. Very insightful and very important step, record keeping. Okay, the final question for you, Ruchira. How often should institutions revisit and revise their PoSH policy, and what triggers should prompt an update?
See, this, I can suggest that it's a good idea to look into the policy at least once a year, review it. Yeah, because there is no standing order, or the law also doesn't talk about when and how to review the policies. But I would feel 1 year is a good time, because the internal committee is holding that office for 3 years, right? So in those 3 years, 3 times, just revisit the policy. What would trigger? I think probably 3 things that trigger where we actually go back to the policy and check that, okay, what needs to be done. I think one is a legal development. If any amendment comes up, if any orders, any rulings, any judgment that has come across which requires certain provisions to be part of the policy, or certain provisions that needs to be executed at the institution level, we put that as part of the policy. Right? So any amendments, I would say, any judgment, any notices, whether from the MWCB or any other such government authority that's coming from. Second, I would say where a case has happened. Yeah, a lot of times one incident happens and it's like a eye-opening journey for the internal committee, right? So a lot of times the law is absolutely silent on those issues, but these are practical challenges that are happening, and the internal committee needs to address. I'll give you one example, like withdrawal of complaints. The law is silent on withdrawal of, and if anybody asks, like, if somebody wants to withdraw the complaint, what does the internal committee do? So some institutes, some organizations, they mention that once a complaint is filed, the internal committee has the right to take it forward even if you withdraw it. Okay? And some companies says that, okay, companies, organizations, institutes, including all of them, they say that the law doesn't allow withdrawal of complaint, we will not allow withdrawal of complaint. Somewhere the policy says that, okay, we will allow you to withdraw the complaint, because if that person is not appearing for all these meetings and all, then what's the point of taking it forward, right? Then in that case, we will take written reasons as to why you are withdrawing them. So these things are something that we define as a policy. So, I think it was some years back when we were handling a complaint for a particular organization, and this incident had come up where the complainant wanted to withdraw it, and the policy was silent. So we went back to the policy after redressing the complaint. We went back to the policy, and then we kind of included those provisions in the policy. The third reason that could possibly trigger the reason to relook into the policy would be institutional growth. Now, something that you mentioned, what if we have 4 or 5 campuses and that increases to 6 more campuses, right? So in your policy, you include that, okay, this is the group head, these are the units included, these are the internal committee members. So as and when, say, for example, 1 unit increases, all of those things happen, then in that case, you also include in the policy. I think the legal development, the institution growth, and cases that happen. I think these are the 3 possible reasons as to why we want to visit the policy. But once a year is a good practice, I would say.
Understood. Okay, now let's look at the questions that we already have. First is by Ranjini. Can you please elaborate on the specific additions that should be considered in educational institutions with respect to UGC guidelines? Please draw out the difference between PoSH in other companies as opposed to educational institutions. Ruchira?
Can I take this? I think I was talking around this time when this complaint came up with constituting the internal committee. See, the UGC regulation, okay, let's talk about the PoSH law first. the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace, Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act of 2013, which we commonly call as the PoSH Act, specifically says that to constitute an internal committee, you need to have a presiding officer who is the senior level woman employee. You need to have 2 members from amongst the employees, and you need to have 1 external member. All these members must be committed to the cause. Ideally, they should be committed to the cause. They may have a social background, legal background, and a person familiar with the issues of sexual harassment at work. That's what the law is saying, the PoSH law. Now, of course, this particular legislation proved to be a forerunner, which is why now in 2015 we had the UGC regulation on prevention of sexual harassment. So all the colleges and universities affiliated to UGC and who fall under the umbrella of UGC, they said, the UGC regulation said that you need a presiding officer who is a senior level woman employee. If my memory is not failing me, then in case of a university, somebody who is at a professor level, and in case of colleges, that person can be an assistant professor or a reader. That is the eligibility to be a presiding officer. Then the UGC regulation also mentions that you need to have 2 representation from the faculty staff, and you need to have 2 members from the non-teaching staff. You need to have at least 3 student representation, master's, graduation, and research, all elected through, the democratic way in how the colleges do elections. Yeah? And you need an external member. So this is primarily the difference between how you constitute an internal committee as per the PoSH law and what is being added by the UGC regulation. Because the UGC regulation, I think at college level, it is of course important to have student representation, which is why the students are added. But these students become part of the committee only when either parties to the complaint is a student. So if there are complaints that have been raised where the parties to the complaint are, say, faculty members, then the student representation will not be part of that committee for that particular. I hope I was able to explain the difference. If you have a follow-up questions, then I'm happy to take it.
Yeah, we'll get back to that. Another question by Shanti. We'll just take this question first. She has a question regarding withdrawal of complaint. I think you have kind of addressed that. And a follow-up question is, I would also like to know if IC and HEI, do they need to register their institution with SheBox?
I'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So frankly, I'm not aware if a standard central order has come for AICTE to register on the SheBox, but I think last month, May, the MWCD, keeping in mind the judgment that has come from the Supreme Court, which requires all government and non-government entities to register on the SheBox. They have made it mandatory. But state-wise, we have been receiving, rather district-wise, we have been receiving some notification as to how the SheBox registration is mandatory for that particular district. For AICTE specifically, see, if you ask me, if you open the SheBox, it will say all government and non-government organization, it is mandatory to register on the SheBox. But frankly, right now, I am not aware if a centralized or a specific institution-specific regulation has come or a notice has come which requires for SheBox registration. I mean, there is no harm if you register on SheBox because it's acting as a database. So, as an organization, as an institute, you can go register on the SheBox, and the steps are quite easy to follow. They have given a step-by-step guides also. If you open the FAQ, you will get all the information there as to how to register. It's quite easy. And it just acts as a database. So that's pretty much about it. Yeah.
Any other questions for Sharmistha ma'am and Ruchira?
I actually had a question for Ruchira. So, do you recommend anything about digital contact, like any resource online for digital contact and cyber stalking, which we could just refer to when we frame our own policy? Because we have a few lines, but I think we can definitely improve that.
Yeah, I think, ma'am, when you are, you can elaborate on the provision. where you can put in the examples. Let's see, sending of obscene messages, texts, all of those things, cyber stalking, and taking of screenshot, because like I said, it's a very
Yes.
common practice nowadays.
Right.
So you can mention these examples and just put one line that it is not just confined to all these things. It could be more. Right? It's not just any other form of cyber stalking or any other form of digital harassment can amount to sexual harassment.
But is there any website which kind of details this? Because if me telling them versus pointing them to a source.
I rather than just giving you an answer here, because I don't remember the website, but I can definitely look into it and give it to you, because I want to give you a resource which is more trustworthy.
Yeah, because as you said, like a lot of people are not even aware that they have been cyber stalked, because they're always taking pictures, right? So they may not even make that connection till later.
Yes.
And
I will help you with that.
Great, that would be very helpful. Thank you so much.
No problem. We do have something in the chat box.
Yeah. Regarding, sorry, somebody spoke.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please
this is a follow-up regarding student representation. So you said that there should be 3 student representatives. One is from master's, undergrad, and which is the other one?
One is a master, undergrad, and research. If your college is offering, yes.
PhD scholars. So, and how are they supposed to be elected? You said democratic way of electing.
Yes. So
how do we go about doing it?
Okay. So the UGC regulation says that they have been elected. They are the elected representatives. Now, how they are elected is not something that is defined in the UGC regulation, but I'm assuming that you do have elections in your colleges, and then these elected representatives can be part of the committee. That is my understanding of the regulation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, another question from Shanti. Regarding withdrawal post taking down reasons for withdrawal, is it mandatory to get counter signature from the complainant, or what would be an advisable thing to do?
See, first of all, these are very tricky situations, because the law is absolutely silent on withdrawal of the complaint. Okay, that it doesn't talk about what happens to the complaint if the complaint is withdrawn. Anyway, taking into the consideration that the complainant doesn't want to go ahead and wants to withdraw the complaint for whatever reasons, it is always advisable to take it in writing the reasons why that withdrawal is happening. Because it shouldn't happen that if something goes down south for whatever reasons, they come back and say, oh, it was the internal committee who forced me to withdraw the complaint. Or, I was forced by somebody else to withdraw the complaint, or something of that sort, right? So I think it's very important to take it in writing, take it a signature, why the complaint is being withdrawn. That's the important part. I hope I could help.
Can I ask one more question, Ruchira? Thanks for clarifying. So, yes, I mean, I'm also much in a tricky situation regarding withdrawal. So, like you rightly said, take it down as far as reasons are concerned, and have them sign on the document. But in one particular issue that I'm stuck is this institution has taken down the reasons, but they have acknowledged that that complaint, and they've acknowledged the reasons, everything, but they're not really asking. Because probably the student is not in campus right now, they're saying that we cannot force her to sign this document, and I'm yet to get clarity why are they not getting the signature. Because yes, as a complainant, I'm giving a written reason as to why I want to withdraw the complaint, and after that the IC acknowledges the complaint, and there has to be a signature and counter signature, as far as I know from what I have learned. So in this case, if the counter signature from the complainant is missing, that personally is a concern for me. I'm not sure about others, because that actually does not say if the person somebody digitally has sent a mail on her behalf, or where there has been a coercion of a kind, or she doesn't want to get into signature. So I'm yet to have a meeting and understand this from this institution. But asking the complainant to send another mail saying that yes, it was me who sent this mail, and there is nobody who forced me, does not really help, does it?
No. So maybe if the person has given in writing why they are withdrawing the complaint, they should sign it.
Right.
That's my whole understanding. Because see, if you're filing a complaint, you're putting allegation against somebody, the internal committee is investing time looking into the matter, and then you say that no, I want to withdraw the complaint. Then you have to give reasons and you have to sign it. Then the
Right.
internal committee will say, okay, the allegations could not be proved because the complaint was withdrawn and we are stopping the inquiry. Right. So it's. I mean, you can have a conversation with the institute that you are part of, and have a conversation with them, and determine that it is important. See, otherwise, what happens is, it might just come back in any other form and say
Correct.
that, oh, the internal committee had forced me. I was under some other influence, and that's why I had to withdraw the complaint. So that sign is important. I think you need to have a conversation with the complainant also, to make that person understand why this signature is in. When you're
Correct.
saying something on and we are recording it on paper, then you have to acknowledge it. It's important that way.
Got it. Got it. Right. Thank you so much, Ruchira. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad to help you.
All right. And before we wrap up, if you'd like to take this conversation further with your internal teams, we have an e-learning course on PoSH specifically designed for educational institutions. It's practical, engaging for students, scenario-based, story-based, and it's suitable for students, faculty, non-teaching staff. So reach out to us after the session if you'd like access or maybe a demo. But thank you so much, Sharmistha ma'am and Ruchira, for sharing such concrete, real-world strategies. These are the kind of insights that can help IC members strengthen their own processes right away. We need to have, these kind of conversations more and more. And thank you, audience, for joining us today. Let's keep this conversation going, and together, hopefully, we build campuses that aren't just compliant, but truly safe, inclusive, and respectful. Thank you so much. We'll create something similar soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me here. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thanks so much.
Pleasure.